I'm 72 years old, and the moment I finally understood what shaped my life didn't arrive with drama. It came one quiet morning, standing at the kitchen sink, watching my older hands move through a routine I've repeated for decades. Nothing was wrong in that moment, and that's what made the realization so sharp. I had built a life that worked, and somehow that was the problem. There's a truth most people don't like to look at, especially when they're young. The biggest forces in your life aren't the loud decisions. They're the quiet ones. The ones you make once, then keep making again without noticing. They don't explode. They don't announce themselves. They simply settle in, and before you realize it, they've shaped where you wake up, who you sit beside, and what you quietly wonder about when the house goes still at night. The decision that shaped my entire life wasn't about money or love or where I lived. It was simpler than that. I chose comfort over honesty. Not once, repeatedly. And every time, it felt reasonable. The first realization came late, though the pattern started early. I believed that if something didn't hurt, it must be right. If it didn't cause conflict, it must be wise. I mistook the absence of discomfort for peace. What I didn't understand then was that comfort doesn't mean alignment. It just means familiarity. I stayed in situations longer than I should have, because leaving would have required explaining myself. I nodded along in rooms where my silence was mistaken for agreement. I learned how to keep the surface smooth, even when the water underneath was restless. At the time, it felt mature, responsible, polite. What it cost me was harder to see. The cost was a slow dimming. Not despair, just a quiet loss of sharpness, like a photograph left too long in the sun. Another lesson arrived when I realized how often I confused being needed with being valued. I said yes because it made me useful. I stayed because others relied on me. There's a certain pride in being dependable, and I wrap myself in it. But usefulness can become a cage when it replaces truth. I told myself that sacrifice was noble, that patience was strength, that wanting more was selfish. Those beliefs kept me steady, but they also kept me still. Years passed where nothing went terribly wrong, and nothing went deeply right either. The emotional cost wasn't pain. It was a persistent sense that I was watching my own life from the side. Quiet resentment has a way of sneaking in when you deny yourself too long. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up as fatigue you can't explain, irritability at small things, a heaviness in conversations that used to feel easy. I didn't recognize it for what it was. I thought I was just tired. I was tired, but not from effort. I was tired from pretending I didn't want what I wanted. The next realization took even longer. Avoiding regret doesn't prevent it. It only delays it. I believed that if I made safe choices, I could avoid looking back with pain. What I learned instead is that regret doesn't always come from mistakes. Sometimes it comes from the things you never risked at all. I never leapt when something called to me quietly. I waited for certainty. Certainty never came. Life moved on without The emotional price was subtle but heavy. A growing list of what-ifs that didn't hurt individually, but together formed a weight I carried into older age. There's a particular sadness in realizing you were capable of more feeling than you allowed yourself to have. Not more success, more aliveness. I didn't fail loudly. I faded carefully, and fading is harder to mourn because no one else notices it happening. Another truth I learned too late is that time doesn't punish indecision immediately. It rewards it at first. When you delay a hard choice, life often smooths things over. The discomfort passes, the urgency fades. You think you've gotten away with something, but time is patient. It waits until your options narrow, then quietly presents you with the bill. By the time I felt ready to choose differently, the landscape had changed. Responsibilities had grown roots. Habits had become identities. People had learned who I was based on who I had pretended to be. Changing felt like betrayal, not just to them, but to the version of myself I had worked so hard to maintain. The emotional cost here was fear, not the sharp kind, but the dull kind that convinces you it's too late. That kind of fear doesn't stop you from living, it teaches you how to live smaller. I also learned that being reasonable can become an excuse for being afraid. I had good reasons for every choice I made, sensible reasons, defensible reasons. If someone had asked, I could explain everything. What I couldn't explain was why I felt a quiet grief, even when things were fine. Reason can justify almost anything. The heart doesn't argue, it just withdraws. And when it does, life becomes efficient, but not meaningful. I mistook explanation for understanding. They are not the same. There was a moment, not long ago, when I realized I had spent years managing outcomes instead of listening to myself. I measured success by stability, not by truth. I avoided storms so well that I forgot what wind felt like. The cost was a narrowing of emotional range. Joy became muted because it was never allowed to be wild. I'm not saying comfort is wrong. I'm saying it's incomplete. A life built entirely on comfort may protect you from pain, but it will also protect you from depth, and depth is where meaning lives. The final lesson is the gentlest and perhaps the hardest to accept. Awareness always arrives before change, but change doesn't arrive automatically. I've met many people who understand their patterns and never alter them. Insight alone doesn't save you, choice does. I see now that the decision that shaped my life wasn't made in one moment. It was made in thousands of small ones. Each time I stayed quiet instead of honest. Each time I chose ease over alignment. Each time I told myself I'd revisit the question later. Later came. It just came older. If I could sit across from you now, I wouldn't warn you dramatically. I wouldn't tell you to burn things down or chase every impulse. I would simply ask you to notice where you're choosing comfort when what you really want is truth. Notice where you're staying, because it's easier than explaining yourself. Notice where you've postponed a decision so long it feels invisible. Time doesn't rush you, but it doesn't wait either. It moves at the same pace whether you're awake to your choices or not. The good news, the quiet, hopeful truth, is that awareness changes the weight of time. When you see what you're doing, you regain the ability to choose. I didn't ruin my life, but I did shape it carefully away from its sharpest edges. And while there's peace in that, there's also longing. If you're younger than I am, and you are, there is still room to decide differently, not loudly, not recklessly, but honestly. Life doesn't ask you to be fearless, it asks you to be awake. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything.